Morning, everybody. As we go to the chitas of today, we're holding in the book of in the Parsha of Teruma in the book of Shemais. We're holding on chapter 26, verse number 15. Vasisa kesakroshim. You should make the planks a mishkan to the tabernacle atzei shitim. It should be made out of acacia wood. Oimdim that stand vertically. Now she says it should be Rasha, it should be said, it should have said Vasisa Kroshim. You should make planks. In the same way it says regarding the other objects. What is Hakroshim? The planks. Sisa Kroshim. Hey is like the hey idea. Hey means that there's something special about this. It means that the planks were to be from those that were set and designated for that purpose. It's special planks, so to say. These are special planks. As Rashi mentioned before, our father Jacob planted the cedars in Egypt. When he died, he instructed his sons to take them along with them when they were to leave Egypt, saying to them, the Holy One, blessed be He, will command you in the future to construct a tabernacle in the desert from acacia wood. And therefore, these are special planks. They were known by the Jews for hundreds of years. So to see that they'll be ready for your possession. This is what Rabbi Shalom Habavli wrote in his piyut, in his poem. The plants of those who urged by their father Jacob grew rapidly. They become cedar planks of our house, referring to the fact that they were urged to have them ready in the possession beforehand. So that's why it says hakroshim, the planks. In essence, they were brought up with these planks. They were brought up with these woods. Maybe they went to the woods to look at these trees as they grew in the Mitzrayim. Atze shitim oindim, vertically. This is the length of the plant by being standing upright along the wall of the tabernacle. But do not make the walls with planks that are lying horizontally, that the width of the plank form the height of the wall, one plank on top of the other. So it needs to be lots of used to make houses. They still, if you make it out of wood, you put it, the planks are laying sideways. Over here, the planks were the poles were standing upright. Verse 16, the length of each plank is 10 cubits. And each plank was the width of 1.5 cubits. So what does it teach us? Rashi says from here we learned that the height of the Mishkan was 10 cubits. Question is how much 10 cubits is. Either 12 feet, 15 feet, or 18 feet. From here we learned that the length of the tabernacle, we know the length, but there were 20 planks that were on both the north and the south, and therefore the Mishkan was 30 cubits in the length of the Mishkan was 30 cubits. Verse 17. Each plank had 2 fingers, so to say. That's what a plank looked like. Those are the fingers on the bottom. Each plank had 2 fingers. Mushulaves elachesai, each to the other, must be likewise to all the planks of the Mishkan. That's where they put the adonim. They put those fingers into the sockets. He carved out the middle part of the bottom of each plank to the height of 1 cubit, and leave a quarter of its width, meaning of the cubit, one on one side and a quarter on the width on the other side. And these were the 10 fingers, and the part that carved out was half of the width with the remaining portion of the plank, meaning a half a cubit in the middle. These tendons were inserted into the base, into the adonim, which were hollow. The base were a cubit height and sat in the continuous line of 40, because there was 2 to each plank. So that means there were 40 there were 40 adonim on each side, one next to the other. The tenon of the plank that were inserted into the hollow of the base were carved also on the three other sides, the width of the shape parameter being equal to the thickness of the rim of the base. So when the plank covered the entire top of the base, or if not, there would have been a gap between each plank equal to the thickness of the rim of the two bases, which would separate them. And this is what it says: they must be flush against each other at the bottom, that each side of the tenon was carved out so that it would plank directly adjoined each other. So they made sure that in essence everything stuck together. It's a tight fit. With shulaves, Rashi said they were made like rungs of a ladder, separate from one another, and connected at the ends in order to fit into the hollow of the base, like a rung fits into the hole in the side of the ladder. Ishal achaisai, meaning corresponding one to the other, that both of these fingers, both of these tendons, be carved out equally with the same dimensions, so that two tendons not be positioned one towards the inside, the other towards the outside within the width of the plank, which is 1 cubit. It was a very tight fit because the whole plank was only 1 cubit. Onkelos translates yodais, tzirin as yodais, fingers, since it resembles the hinges and the doors, fits into the holes of the threshold. Verse 18, Vasi says, Mishkan, and you should make the planks for the tabernacle, Esenim Kedesh, 20 planks, Lefas Neged Temona, to the southern side. Now she says, Peya, Lefas, he's translating the word Lefas. Peya, the term Peya here does not mean corner, rather in the entire side. Usually a Peya means a corner. But over here, it means a side. As Onkelos translated, the Ruach Eva Droima, to the south facing side. Verse 19. You take 40 silver bases under the 20 planks. Esem keresh for the 20 planks. I'm sorry. Shtei adonim tachas hakeresh echad. 2 adonim under each plank. L'shtei others to 2 fingers. Shtei adonim tachas hakeresh echad. 2 adonim underneath the plank. L'shtei yadesav to 2 tens. Mishkan Hashem is the second side of the tabernacle, which was the north side. If not softened, it was the north side of the tabernacle. Esim Kedesh was again 20 planks. Rabbayim name Kasem, you had to make again 40 silver bases. Shnei Adonim Tachas HaKedesh Echad, 2 Adonim, 2 bases underneath each Kedesh. Shnei Adonim Tachas HaKedesh Echad, 2 Adonim on each Kaddish. Here a picture about Adon, the Adonim. So now we finished the northern and southern side. And now we go to the western side. Mishkan, Yama, to the western side, Tasas Shisha Kroshim. You shall make 6 kroshim. So it was actually altogether 8 kroshim. 6 in the middle, that was actually the middle, and the other 2 were the two were connected to the actual wall. So it was 6 in the middle. When you looked inside the Mishkan, you saw 6 kroshim, because the other 2 were looked like part of the length of the wall. The active Yatasa Shisha Krosh, Ash's uncles and Liafse, which is the entrance, and because the entrance was the east side is called the face, the west side is called the back, meaning the end. For the front is the head, the beginning. That's where you have to look at the Mishkan, east to west. Tasa Shisha Kroshim, that means that thus it was making it 9 cubits in its width. So really it was 9 cubits, not 10, it was 9 cubits in its width. And you must make 2 planks on the back corners of the tabernacle. So that's why it was 8 altogether. So you must make 2, one for the northern corner and the other for the southern corner. All 8 planks were in one line, except that the 2 were not entirely facing the inner space of the tabernacle. but only half a cubit on one side and a half a cubit the other side was visible, and that's why ultimately it was 10. I'm sorry. So ultimately each Kaddish was a cubit and a half. So therefore there was a half a cubit that was facing, so ultimately automatically there was 10 cubits in the middle. So but a half a cubit in one half and a half a cubit on the other side, and completing the 10 cubit width. So that's why 6 would make it 9. But then you had the other two that added, part of it was part of the wall, and part of it you saw it inside. If you were inside, you had the capability to see the half of a cubit from this side and half a cubit from the other branch, which made it all together that in the Mishkan itself was exactly 10 cubits in the width of the Mishkan. And the remaining cubits on each side sat against the cubit thickness of the plank on the north side and on the south side. Verse 24, and they must be flush against each other at the bottom. They must be flush against each other at the top. They must be done with the two planks on the two corners. Now she says, Kala kroshim, the thickness of the rims of the two bases, not separate between them, but distant from one another. This is, as I explained above, that the hinge, like tension, should be carved out on the sides so that the width of the planks protrude on its side beyond the tension of the plank in order to cover the rim of the base. So that's ultimately to flush against. Likewise, each corner plank, western row, was carved out long enough that the width of the thickness corresponding to the portion carved in the side of the Dacian plank of the southern and northern worlds. They made sure that it was exactly flush. Because again, what happened was they were made out of wood, and then they covered it with gold. So it needed to make sure that when you covered it with gold, that it was exactly still flush with the adonim underneath. The yacht of Yis equivalent to in parallel, al reisha shel keresh at the top of the plank. So they also connected the tops of the plank. You see that cutout in the middle? On the two sides. And there was a little ring that they put inside. Am I showing you the right page? That's the question. Oh, there, that's the page. See that little thing over there? So that's how they connected the top. So it was connected on the top, and it was connected, and they were sitting the sockets on the bottom. So Tabas Achash, with a band, each plank had 2 notches carved on the top along the width, one on each of its 2 sides, each the thickness of a band. And he inserted in it with the matching notch to next to the plank with 1 ring. So that's how he connected the tops. However, I did not know if these rings were fixed or movable. And regarding the planks of each corner, a band was fitted into the width, both of the southernmost and the northernmost. I'm not sure exactly how it worked on the corners. How was this done on the corners of the planks? So ultimately, these walls were connected. So if you see over here, for example, look at the corner. If you can see well, the corner. There was a ring that connected the northern wall to the back, and the back to the back. So, so must be to 2 of them, the 2 corner planks, the plank at the end of the north side, and the joining plank on the west side, and it must be set on both same quarters. There, how they connected both sides to make sure that the Mishkan was one full U. Verse 25. In the west side, there will also be a total of 8 planks, and there should be the silver bases, Adonim, Kesef, all silver, 16 in all in the bottom. Shishas Adonim, Shnei Adonim Tachas HaKeresh Echad, Ushnei Adonim Tachas HaKeresh Hasheni, and two Adonim under each Keresh. Now she says, these are those mentioned above. You must make 6 planks, and you must make 2 planks on the corners, thus making a total of 8 planks in the western row. The method of arranging the planks is stated in the Mishnah of Meleches HaMikshon as follows: He made the bases hollow and carved them each plank at the bottom, a quarter of a cubit on one side and a quarter of a cubit on the other, and half of the remaining portion carved out in the middle. He thus made 2 tensions resemble to 2 feet. But I think it's correct reading chavokim, like 2 rungs of a ladder, separate from one another, and they were whittled so that they fitted the hollow of the base, like rungs that fit in the hole in the side of a ladder. And this is the meaning of the word mishulaves, made like a rung, shaliva. He inserted them into the 2 bases. As it says, the 2 bases. He made notches in the planks on the top, a finger breadth away from the edge, and one on side, and a finger breadth on the other side. He fitted them with a golden band, so they adjoined the plank not to be separate from each other. As it says, they must be flush against one another. The bottom. This is the Mishnah, and is explained as I said above, following the order of the verses. And he said, and that's what Rashi says. You look at the Mishnah and you look at the verse. I've put together it nicely. Verse 26, Rasisa Brichim, and you shall make crossbars. You shall make crossbars. Atzi Shitim. This is the crossbars. Went across the planks. Another picture of them. Here's another picture if you want to see. So there were 5 of them. You look closely at this picture, you can see the 5 of them. It's very hard to see. You see openly 2, but you see in the middle. Those 2 little holes. So there were 5 different connections. Hamisha lakashi tzela mishkan echad. Now she says, Berichim means holes. Hamisha, 5 for the plank on one side of the tabernacle. These 5 were actually 3, but the upper and lower crossbar were made into 2 pieces. One traversed half the length of the wall, and the other one traversed the other half of the length of the wall. One was inserted in the rings on one end, and the other was inserted in the rings on the other end, until they reached each other. The upper and lower crossbar were actually made 2 of 4. The middle one, however, was as long as the entire wall. So again, this is the picture. I'm facing the wrong place. You had the middle one is right over here. It was called the Bria Chatichen. The middle one. That went through the entire building. That was a miraculous thing. I don't know how they got a pole that went through. You're talking about over 60 amas. Thus, the upper and lower crossbar were actually made up of 4. The middle one, however, was long as the entire wall, extending from the one end wall to the other. As it says, the crossbar of the wall mid-height, from one end of the tabernacle to the other. The upper and lower crossbar had a ring on which the surface of the plank in which they were inserted. 2 rings for each plank, arranged so that the 3 points within the 10 cubits of the height of the plank, one part being in the top ring upwards and one on the lower ring downwards. Each part of the ring a quarter length of the plank, meaning 2.5 cubits. 2.5 cubits and the two parts of 5 cubits between the rings, in order that all the rings align exactly with one another. The middle crossbar, however, did not have rings. Rather, the plank had a hole drilled through the thickness, and the crossbar passed through them by the way of the hole that aligned with one another. And that's what it says, into the planks. The length of each upper and lower crossbar on the north and southern side was 15 cubits, and the middle was 30 cubits long, from one end to the other, from the east to the west. As to the 5 crossbars on the west side, the length of the upper and lower ones were each 6 cubits. And in the middle, there was 12 cubits long, corresponding to the width of the 8 planks. So it is explained in Melechas HaMishkan in the Gemara, verse 25. Now we go to the eastern side of the Mishkan. The eastern side of the Mishkan. You have 5 planks, 5 crossbars, the planks of the other side of the tabernacle. I'm sorry, this is still talking about this is still talking about the brichim, the bars on the wall of the Mishkan. There was 5, and just like on the north side, there was so too on the Tzela Mishka Shenis, Vachamisha Brichel Tzela Yama to the west side, to the back. And then you had the crossbar at the wall mid-height, the bar that went through the entire wall. Mavriach ben Akatza would go from one side of the tabernacle to the other end of the tabernacle. Verse 29. You must overlay the planks with gold. You must make the gold rings gold. Bottom of Richim, which were the rings for these bars. Everything was pure, was gold. To hold the crossbars, the rings that made them will act as holders in which the crossbars will be inserted. Not that the gold was stuck into the crossbars, for there was no covering attached to them. Rather, he fixed it into the planks as a form of gold tubes, like two halves of a split hollow reed, which were fixed to the level of the rings, each on each side, so that the length filled the entire width of the plank on each side of the ring. Crossbar was inserted into one tube, passed from it to the ring, and from the ring to the second tube. The crossbar there was thus entirely covered with gold when inserted into position to the planks. These crossbars protruded on the outside of the tabernacle, so that the rings of the tubes were not visible inside the tabernacle. The entire wall was smooth within. So in the Beis Hamikdash, you didn't see any rings or any tubes. These were all outside. Verse 30, and you shall erect the tabernacle according to its laws, which I showed you at the mountain. Now she says, after you complete to erect it, you will have been shown on the mountain beforehand. For in the future, I'll teach you and show you the procedure of how it must be erected. And that completes the Chumash for today. Start now, chapter 29 of Tanya. Alter Rebbe continues to explain why we struggle as a Beinani, why we struggle with our soul, and all the different struggles that we have that our nefesh habahamis, our animalistic soul, puts upon us. So in 26, the Alter Rebbe stated that both depression and dullness of the heart produces a state of sluggishness, which prevents a person to overcome his evil inclination of the animal soul. He therefore outlines in chapter 26 to chapter 28 the methods of overcoming depression arising from the various causes, whether it's family life, money, evil thoughts, whatever it might be. In this chapter, the Alter Rebbe will discuss means of dealing with the dullness of the heart, which is called Timtum Halev, the dullness of the heart, after describing the state more clearly. So we're going to go into this concept, the dullness of the heart, where people basically are irreverent. They have no, they just have no feelings to the situation. So now he goes, those whose souls are a level of Beinim must seek means of contending with another difficulty. Occasionally and even frequently, Yeshlem Timtum Alev, they have an experience of the dullness of the heart. Shanase ke'evan, it almost like turns like stone. And he Pashut simply cannot open his heart. He just can't open his heart. Not interested. Especially to the service of the heart, which is the Aveda of Tefillah, which is again service of prayer. So Chassidus explains that service of the heart, the prayer is a service of the heart, in a twofold sense. Number one, why is prayer the service of the heart? It takes place in the heart. For in prayer, one strives to extend his intellectual apprehension of godliness into the realm of emotions, experience in the heart. The love and fear of God, that's why tefillah is in the heart, because that's the purpose of tefillah. Number two is the object of prayer is the heart. For in prayer, one tries to transform the nature of his heart, to steer away from mundane desires to which it naturally inclined, and to direct it instead towards yearning and spiritual of godliness. That's what the whole davening is the ladder from the heavens to the earth, from the earth to the heavens. To accomplish both of these objectives of prayer, the heart must of course be open and receptive to this concept. And thus, Timtum Halev is a major hindrance to this concept. And most of us, I believe, struggle with this, that we simply are not motivated. We are not motivated. We know what is right, but simply not motivated. That's Timtum Halev. We don't feel it. Gam li'pamim, also the heaviness of his heart, simply doesn't give him the koyach to fight with his Yetzer Hara. To sanctify himself with something that he's allowed, because simply his heart is heavy. It's too many issues going on. As the Alter Rebbe explained in chapter 27, it is a task of a Beinani to suppress the desire of his heart, meaning by not eating as soon as he is urged to do so. This requires a battle with one's evil impulse, which demands that he gratify all of his desires. When his heart is dull, heavy, and insensitive, he can't fight this evil impulse, basically. So we have this problem, it's called Timtum Halev, simply that we have no interest. I have no sensitivity to the subject. You're telling me how great davening is. I just don't feel it. I feel that my praise is taking me time. It does to take time. It's a time taker, and I don't see it. I don't feel it. This is a hard problem. Might be a tougher solution. In this case, the device giving to the Zoya, the Amarav Mesifti Ganeden, Rav, famous, the Amora in the Gemara, Rav and Shmuel. Rav said in Gan Eden, Rav taught in Gan Eden. We're talking about a teaching that he taught in Gan Eden after he was in paradise. Rav in Gan Eden gave a teaching, a wooden beam which does not catch fire. What do you do with a wooden beam in the world that does not catch fire? What do? You break it. That's what you do. You take a wooden beam, you take a wooden trunk, a tree trunk, and what do? You have to smash it. You have to simply break it into pieces. If you want to put in a fire, you have to take the beam and break it into pieces. That's what they do. You simply break it into pieces. So Rav said that if a beam in this world needs to be broken into pieces so that fire should be able to connect to it, a body that the fire of God, it doesn't want to catch, it doesn't want to connect to, you have to break it. You got to break it. A person has to. This is all nice talk. In essence, the Alter Rebbe says, it's all nice talk. We need to put it into practice. We need to sometimes break ourselves. Mevachinla, you have to crush it. And thereby the body becomes receptive to the soul's light, as a Zohar concludes. So this is a famous Zohar. The analogy that quoted from the Zohar, we see that wood is made receptive to the flame. That's where the Eibishter created wood. That wood, if you put wood in fire, it's going to burn. Rather than the flame being increased or improved to the point where it overwhelms the wood. And similarly with the insensitive heart, the problem is that the wood is created, but the problem is it's not going that easy because it's a big log. And if you ever try, it's going to be very difficult for the fire to catch on a big log. Therefore, you need to splinter it. You need to break it. And then the fire will catch on easier to the log. So too, the Eibishter made the heart to be affected. Problem is, it's a big log. The heart is too thick. There's a thick log. We need to break it. We need to break it. By removing the Timtum Alev must be eradicated by removing its underlying cause. Rather than overwhelmed by increasing the intellectual light of the contemplation on the greatness of God, you simply need to break it. Sometimes you'll try to try to throw it a lot of light. It won't penetrate because it's not broken, it's not divided. And therefore, the light, the oil, and the fire, the passion can't affect it. So if we can first break it into situations, instead of saying, oh, this is a great burden, let's divide this burden. Let us put every concept into its category. Hirush. So I'll give you the reference. Nahud in the Shmasa, in the Neshama is called a fire. Neshama, the fire, the light of the soul, which in this case does not penetrate the body. Means that the light of the soul and the intellect does not illuminate. Kol kach, so much, limshal achumras haguf, to prevail over the coarseness of the body. Av shemeivin is brain b'sichlik b'desavaya, Thus, although he understands and he meditates in his mind on the greatness of God, the problem is it doesn't apprehend, it's not implanted in his mind to the point that he's able to prevail of the courses of his heart. Because of the degree of the coarseness and the crassness of the body. So my body is too heavy. I have too many issues. I am simply cannot get out of the ditch. And the reason why I can't do it, the cause of this deficiency is the arrogance of the klippa, the animal soul. That it exalts itself over the holiness and the light of the divine soul. That's chutzpah. That's the chutzpah of the animal soul. Because the godly soul is much stronger than it, much more powerful than it. But the animalistic soul has chutzpah. It has such ego that it won't give in. It obscures this light, this unbelievable light, and darkens its light. So the Alter Rebbe says you see your animalistic soul is not one force. It has many issues. And therefore the best way we do it is break it into issues. Therefore one must crash it and cast it down to the ground. That's as Spivak quoted the analogy, a beam splintered so it can't catch fire. Now the Alter Rebbe proceeds to explain how this is accomplished. He points out that the personality of the Beini is his animal soul. When a Beini says I, the second you say the word I, he's referring to his animal soul. That's who he is. That's who we are. We are an animal soul. We feel with our body. We feel with our senses of the way we were brought up, the environment that we are in. We talk with the environment. We talk with the way we were taught to talk. That's the way we are. So we are an animal soul. Thus, crushing his own spirit, he crushes his sitra achra. So by putting down the I, breaking the I, breaking my ego, and bringing down my ego is already, that is the beginning. That's the crushing. It's not so much about myself. I have to realize the I is not so important. And actually, as the Alter Rebbe is going to be a little bit graphical, the I is a disgusting thing. He crushes Sitra Achra, thereby enables the light of the soul, the intellectual, and the intellect to permeate it, to penetrate him. This is important, you should know, because you have to be careful with this. And that's why the Alter Rebbe says you have to make a time for this. This is not something you do 24/7, because this is not something that can bring you down. And therefore it has to be done in a certain environment and with a certain purpose. This crushing, when I do it to myself, needs to be done that I'm doing it for a purpose, not that I'm doing it because that's what I am. The truth is, I'm my godly soul. I'm doing it for a purpose to be able to reveal my godly soul. Therefore, it needs to be done as the Alter Rebbe says. This means that one's crushed Sitra Achra needs to be cast to the ground by setting aside appointed times. You have to make the time at nowhere. You have to write the right environment, the right situation. That's why by Chassidim it was done by a Farbrengen. That was the Farbrengen. That was the Chassidic gathering when Chassidim, not with the Rebbe, that was a different kind of Farbrengen. When Chassidim got together and they would talk to one another, they would sometimes give each other and tell them the truth of life. It was done in that environment. It was done with love. It was done with high spirits. It was done with a purpose. To be able not to just crush somebody. No, there's no positive thing in crushing anybody. It was done with the purpose to reveal their soul. So therefore, so too you could do it yourself. The Alter Rebbe said, but as I said, you have to make sure you do this correctly. That a person should be humble in oneself, consider himself as despicable and contemptible. As it's written, Relav Nishbar, now a broken heart, Ruach Nishbara, leads to a broken spirit. He has Sitra Achra, again, not a broken spirit, your spirit. You're trying to break your animalistic spirit. You're not trying to break yourself. You're trying to reveal yourself. To be able to reveal your true self, you need to break this clipper. You need to break the eye. You need to break the ego. Which that's you. That he is an ego. The second to say the word I, that's already an ego. Got to break that. We got to crush that concept. That's himself. That's who he is. Ultimately, that's the way I reflect myself. My needs, my physical needs, they're more important, my physical needs, than my soul's physical needs. For his heart, the vital soul, what animates the body, he betok the Alter Rebbe keeps on saying this. You remember in Tanya that the animal soul is still strong in his heart to the Beinoni, and that's the reality. He's not a tzaddik, and therefore he's not a rasha, hopefully, but his animal soul is strong as the way it was born. Nimtza. So if my animal soul is at strength the way it's born, it is indeed ha'adam atzmei. Then it's who you are. Then it's who I am. I am an animalistic soul. That's the way I express myself. I'm expressing myself with my animalistic soul. I speak with my animalistic soul. I think with my animalistic soul. That's the way it is. That's the way God made me. And that's the way, and again, it doesn't make me bad. It just says what it is. And since I have an animal soul, I is very important. To just say I have no ego is very easy to say. That's why tzaddikim God says that Moshe Rabbeinu was an honor. That he was a humbled person. With regard to his divine soul, it says, the soul that you gave within me is pure. Now the word again over here, shenasata bi. We mentioned this many times. Shenasata bi. The soul you put bi in me. So there's the neshama and there's me. The word within me cannot be understood referring to the body alone. The body cannot speak for itself. Cannot speak for itself as a complete man. Thus, it must be the animating soul. Shenashama, shenasata bi. What does that mean? Not that he put it in my body. He put it in my animal soul. Because what's my body? Is my animal soul. My body with all its needs and all its emotions and all its what it is my animal soul. So that's really the meaning of the verse. Shenashama, shenasata bi. The soul you put in my animal soul. Therefore, the word which you gave within me implies that the man is said that is the man himself, who is saying these words is not identified with the pure soul, meaning the divine soul is a thing apart. Shamash and Asata be. I am my animal soul. That's who I am. And that's why we all have different passions and we all have different desires. If we were all godly, we'd have one desire. That would be God. But we're not like that. We're all different. We all have different desires, all have different passions, we all like to learn different things. Why? Because we're learning with our animal soul. Because that's who we are. We are an animal soul. And then the Eibishter, God, in his ultimate kindness, took a godly soul, put it into my animal soul. And this godly soul is pure. It is pure. Pure. Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yatzaita, you formed it. Ba'ata nafachta bi. You blew it within me. What does it mean again within me? Not a body. A body is an inanimate object. You put it within me, within my animal soul. My body is nothing without an animal soul. What is a body without an animal soul? Garnish, nothing. So really, what means me when I say I or me is my animal soul. My animal soul needs to eat. My animal soul needs pleasure. My animal soul needs certain things. It's all my animal soul. It's not the body. Don't blame the body. You have to blame. You have to put it in the right place. It's my animal soul. You can call it my vital soul. It's my animal soul. It's that gives me life. It's that gives me 5 senses. Is my animal soul. Gives me all these senses in life. Touch, feeling, smell, etc. That's who I am. So I am an animal soul that God put within this animal soul, a godly soul. It's within me, the body, and the animal soul, except the case of Tzaddik himself. Right, that tzaddik is the opposite. His whole body became a godly soul. He transformed the animal soul. That's the meaning. The tzaddik transformed the animal soul. He made it into a godly entity. So therefore, his animal soul became godly, and his whole body became godly. Shebehem ulaheper. Kim b'tzaddikim, by a righteous man. Shebehem ulaheper, that by them it's the opposite. Who Adam? By a tzaddik, his godly soul became him. There's no difference between him and his godly soul. He is the godly soul. He's a walking, talking, godly soul. Vigufam, but they have a body. They have a body like everybody else. You're right. That's the besada. That's the vehicle. The body is just a vehicle. They became a vehicle to the godly soul. My vehicle is to the animal soul. My vehicle is my animal soul. That's what drives me. That's what pushes me. That's what inspires me. It's my animal soul. That's why I don't feel the godly soul. Now you understand why we don't feel the godly soul. Because I feel my animal soul. So the body is called the flesh of man, secondary to man himself, the divine soul. Man, what is man? Again, when you say man, a human being, what is human being? Either his godly soul or his animal soul. And like the sense of Hillel, Azake, Hillel the elder. Hillel Azake usually goes because there were different Hillels. He had grandchildren that were called after Hillel, and it was Hillel Kotten. Hillel Azake was the original Hillel, the Hillel of the famous Hillel in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, in the times of the Second Temple. Hillel Azake, when Hillel used to go to eat, he would say, that he's going to do a favor to his body. He's a godly entity, but he is in a body. He's in a body. What do you do? And he has to go help the body. He has to go do something, a favor to the poor man, which is his body. He had to go do something for the body. But really, we have to go, you got to clean the car. You got to refuel the car, right? You got to refuel the car. What do we do? The whole purpose of the car is for me to get around. I got to refuel the car. So he said, basically, I need to refuel the body. So the body needs to have fuel. I got to refuel the body. The purpose of this body is to serve God. I'm sitting and learning Torah. That's the whole purpose of the body. But the body needs fuel. And I got to go help the body. I got to go fuel the body. That's the way a tzaddik looks at his body. I got to fuel the body. The body needs to sleep. The body needs to eat. The vehicle needs to have its needs. But what is the real purpose? It's only a vehicle. Because the real purpose is the soul, is the journey of the soul. And that was the Hillel's life. And therefore he said, I'm doing an act of kindness. I'm doing an act of kindness that I'm feeding this body. It's an act of kindness. Because really, that's not my life. My life is not eating. My life is not the body. My life is the soul. But the soul needs a vehicle. So the body is the vehicle. I need to keep the vehicle going. So I'm going to go do a favor to the vehicle. Because what he is not the vehicle. The vehicle's secondary. The vehicle's there to get you places. Some people make the vehicle as the most important thing, but that's not true. The vehicle is just there as a vehicle to get you places that you need to go to. So too, Hillel looked at his vehicle, at his body as a vehicle. Something that was separate from him. Oh, I got a body. Why? Because who am I? Nefesh Elokis. I am my godly soul, learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, doing good deeds, elevating the world, whatever his service was. Oh, but I need this whole entity has a vehicle, and we need to help the vehicle. And he would go because by Hillel he had no animalistic soul. So his whole purpose was godliness. He had no animalistic soul. That's who he was. He was a Torah scholar, teacher, leader of the Jewish nation. That's who he was. He talked it, walked it, dealt it, lived it. There was no separation between him and what he was. He thus was one entity, and that was his life. But ultimately, he was a human being. And he looked at his body as a separate from his journey. It was what he used for his journey. Self-understood, he took care of his body, as the Torah says, you should take care of your body. Why? Because in this world, this soul needs this body. Without this body, it cannot accomplish anything in this world. So he actually understands the importance of the body. But as a vehicle, as the way the neshama can accomplish in this world is through this body. By him, his godly soul was the only thing that gave existence to his existence. His godly soul. He was totally pure inside and outside. Because by Hillel, his animal soul was godly. He transformed it. That's a tzaddik. He transformed it into one concept. There was no struggles. There was no fights. There was no issues by him. He had a godly purpose in everything that he did. He thought it that way. He felt that way. That was his passion. That was his life. That was existence. That's what he did. And by him, his animal soul, so his vital soul, his life, so to say, that's what we call the vital soul. My animal soul, even though we gave it the name animal, don't take it negative as an animal is not negative. It's a concept that his life was godly. By me, my life is not godly. The proof is I don't feel godliness in my life. My life is about me. Questions how much ego I have, how much less ego I have. But my life is who I am. And what I do and what I feel. He felt God, he felt his godly soul. He, Hillel, and by tzaddikim, they feel their, if you can imagine such a situation, that they feel their godly soul, that's their purpose, that's their agenda. They don't have an animal soul, or they transformed their animal soul. And they made it one neshama like that. They one neshama. That's what Alter Rebbe said. We shouldn't feel bad, as he began in chapter, he ended in chapter 28, that we shouldn't feel bad that we have, that's one soul. We have two souls. Now the Alter Rebbe went to the next step. Not that we have two souls. Who am I really? Is that my animalistic soul? That's the fact. You know, I'm not a tzaddik. So therefore, that's who you are. Now, okay, now that you face the facts, now you know that you, now I know I'm a log. What do I do about it? That's it. Alter Rebbe just wants to make a important fact that a person should look at himself and know who he is. And once he knows who he is, maybe he can do something about it. Okay. Wow. What a Tanya of the day. Today is the 28th day of the month, which is chapter 135 to chapter 139. You do those 5 chapters, you do the chitas of the day. And Yom, maybe it fits Goel, Yom, with what we were talking about. Yom, the Rebbe brings down a very famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. See, in that year when the Yom was written, in 1944, that year, we were still in the portion of Mishpatim, which talks about the famous statement of the famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which is about the Torah says, if you see the donkey of your enemy crouching underneath the weight of his burden of his packages, Azev Tazevimai, Torah tells us that we must help it. So we have the famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on this. So this is what the Rebbe says. The Baal Shem Tov says, one of the Baal Shem Tov's teaching, when you see chamor, which is a donkey, but he translated it as follows: when you carefully examine your chamor is also in Hebrew to mean chumrius. If you examine your own chumrius, your own materiality, if you examine yourself, your body, you will see that he is your enemy. Meaning that your chamor hates your divine soul, that longs for godliness and spirituality. And furthermore, you will see that this chamor that is struggle with your godly soul, your true godly soul, your chamor, is lying under its burden. As we learned in Tanya, it's very heavy. It's lying under its burden placed upon it, the body, by God, namely, that it should become refined through Torah mitzvahs, but the body is lazy to fulfill them. It's too heavy. It may then occur to you, say, okay, look at this whole burden that I'm carrying around me. You say, you know what? You may think you'll refrain from helping it to enable to fulfill its mission. You say, forget it, you're a lost cause. And instead, you will follow the path of mortification. You'll say, the body. That's why to be careful of the flesh, to break down the body crass materiality. However, not in this approach will the light of Torah reside. Rather, you must aid it, purify the body, refine it, but do not break it by mortification. So you have to be careful with this teach. You have to never, because we need the body. Even Hillel said, let's go help the body. The body wants to be helped. the Nefesh HaBahamis wants to be helped. And Azev Tazivim, that's a teaching of Hashem Tov. You ultimately have to transform the Nefesh HaBahamis. Don't destroy your Nefesh HaBahamis. You can't destroy your Nefesh HaBahamis, then don't destroy it. Because Chas Shalom, by destroying your Nefesh HaBahamis, your animal soul, you might destroy yourself. So be very careful in the way you rectify and deal with your Nefesh HaBahamis. As the Alter Rebbe said, because that's who you are. And to be careful the way you ultimately transform this animal soul. What a beautiful teaching. And Midshem, see you tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll continue to learn the Chitas of the day.